All right. Well, first of all, welcome everyone. I'm Dr. Moore, and with me today, of course, who's been speaking, my co-founder, Dr. Jasby. Thank you so much for carving out this hour on a Friday. We know that you all have full patient schedules. So we're going to be trying to be respectful of your time and move briskly. Today is the first end-to-end walkthrough of the new Aristotle Plus platform. By the end of the session, you will know exactly how to order it, how to read it, and how to put it to work for your very next patient. So there's going to be 5 sections. We're going to try to get this contained in 60 minutes. We'll start with a live walkthrough of a real Aristotle Plus report. Dr. Jasby will drive that. Then we'll cover what's new compared to the original Aristotle panel, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So this is going to include the operational changes that you need to know, the launch kit we are releasing to you today, and finally open it up for a live Q&A where you can throw anything at us, really. Time permitting, we will stay a few minutes over to catch any additional questions. So before we dive in, quick sense of scale. Aristotle Plus went live April 1st, so this month. It is the biggest platform expansion we've ever shipped. So there's 296 metabolites up from the 126 that we had with the original Aristotle. This encompasses 15 health domains up from 12, 124 subdomains up from 83, and KEGG pathway coverage, and this is a big one, up from originally at 68% to 84%. Those are big numbers. But what does this really mean? This means patterns that can be used that might hide between different tests. Now they all land into a single page. So with that, I will hand it off to Dr. Jasby to walk us through the report itself.
Thanks so much, Alex. This section is going to feel like a guided tour. Okay, I'm going to walk you through the structure of the report first on these slides. And then we're going to pull up a anonymized but real patient report and do the same thing with a live walkthrough. So every Aristotle report follows the same 8-section structure. We open with the overall status score, which is a single 0 to 100 number that orients you in seconds. And then we'll have a 15-domain radar chart for priority identification. That will be followed then by a sample quality badge. This is your pre-analytical green light to interpret. From there, we have key clinical insights, top contributors, the digital twin trajectory, and then 20 ranked interventions, and finally the per domain and per subdomain deep dive pages. So same order, every report, and once you've read 3 of these, you have read them all. First up, we're going to really look at the sample quality badge, right? This is our pre-analytical gate. It combines fasting compliance, filter paper spot integrity, percent of metabolites above limit of detection, circadian collection timing, and even recent exertion status into a single 0 to 100 score. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to populate them in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. Okay. If you see anything below 70, the report is going to be flagged as hold, and our team will reach out to discuss whether to interpret conservatively or to recollect. Okay. No good data, no interpretation. But this makes one thing I should note is that this makes so much more, all the more important, conveying to your patients to follow the kit instructions. Okay. I know it is a finger prick dry blood spot collection. It seems on the face of it like a very simple method, but following that collection instruction, the pre-analytical controls that we have with regard to sampling and fasting, these should be adhered to even more now. So this is the single most informative visual on the whole report, and one you will spend, I think, the most time on with your patients. Read it in 10 seconds, okay? Which 2 to 4 domains are pulled furthest toward the center? And those are going to be your priority domains. The shape of the radar is actually often as diagnostic as the value themselves, right? So if you have a lopsided pattern, toward metabolic domains, that tells a different story than a lopsided pattern toward stress and sleep. Here is where the report really stops listing data and starts telling you the story. We generate the top 5 metabolic patterns as well as the top 5 molecular targets that are shown here. And this is an attempt to connect what are often scattered findings into one mechanistic hypothesis written for the clinician, which is very specific, actionable, and referenced. And the other thing is that this section that I really want to highlight is this. It surfaces clinical, certainly led to more people. It surfaces the clinical and molecular targets explicitly, meaning you can use these targets to layer additional therapies that are not a part of the digital twins recommendation set. These are your molecular targets. So if you have a supplement, a therapy, a modality, a piece of equipment that you know works on one of these molecular targets identified in the reports, you should feel free to use this as a handle to do so. So this is, again, the insights is going to go a little bit beyond only the recommendations that we put in the report. Don't skip this section. When a domain score drops, this panel here will tell you which metabolites did it. And critically, we emphasize ratios over single values in this updated Aristotle Plus. Lactate over pyruvate for oxidative phosphorylation. Beta hydroxybutyrate over acetoacetate for hepatic redox states. Kynurenine over tryptophan for inflammation burden, or reduced and oxidized glutathione looking at redox buffering. Okay, ratios are robust to pre-analytical noise in a way that absolute values are not. Now, the digital twin is the computational engine that sets our reporting, including our previous Aristotle and this new Aristotle Plus, apart from other labs. We simulate over 1,300 candidate interventions, each across 1,000 metabolic variants of the patient, and project that impact on every domain over a 26-week horizon now. That output is going to be the ranked menu. And I emphasize the word menu, not mandate, okay? You and the patient, one of the P's of P4 medicine is participatory, right? So you and the patient will choose the interventions that fit that patient's life and not necessarily just the ones the algorithms think are optimal. Now, 20 rank recommendations come out of the digital twin. Each one has a specific classification. Those can be dietary, supplemental, or lifestyle. And the projected impact on each affected domain and the adherence difficulty rating from 1 to 5. We also offer a mechanistic rationale and a retest timing guideline. So supplements, we expect to move in roughly 8 to 12 weeks. Diets usually exert effects in the 12 to 16 week range, and lifestyle interventions from 16 as long as 26 weeks are reported. So we populate the top 3, the top in supplemental, dietary, and lifestyle intervention here to highlight what are the focus areas in each group. So I'm going to now share my screen and open a sample report. We're going to walk through pages 1 through 29. We're going to call out the sample quality badge on page 2, the radar plot, the key clinical insights, the top 5 metabolic patterns, and some ranked interventions and domain pages. To do that, I'm going to switch my sharing screen here. So this is the new Aristotle Plus. You will see how many total biomarkers are analyzed. You will be able to compare your score across this distribution. These scores are matched to age, quintile, and sex. We don't have enough N in our reference cohort to match them, let's say, exactly to 70-year-olds, your patient to maybe other 70-year-olds, but we can match them to septuagenarians in general. And that resolution will increase as the reference cohort grows beyond what is strictly necessary to power these models in this report. Here is the radar plot. As I've mentioned, the 15 new domains are along this spoke here. Every domain you're used to carries forward in either the same name or an updated name, and 3 new domains are added. We're going to go over this in a little more detail. As you can see, scores that are trending toward the center of the radar plot are where our action items, our biggest points of leverage are, and then scores in the green, like here in cellular energy, glycemic control, and nutrition, are going to be further out on the plot itself. Here are the domain scores where you can not just see the absolute score, but how you rank against the reference cohort. And each one of these dots in the dot cloud represents a member of that reference cohort. We have now 124 subdomains, up from 83. This subdomain distribution bar here tells you exactly what your tilt is across these 4 different categories. So this individual who is overall normative at a score of 75 has 2 optimal subdomains, 26 normative subdomains, 56 in early impairment, and 40 that show significant current functional impairment. Sample quality score is here. So if this is between 70 to 84, you should proceed with the interpretations of the report cautiously, and anything below 70 may warrant a resample. So please make sure that your patients are aware of the pre-sampling criteria and the methodology. We're going to check for integrity, so sufficient volume. And if the sample comes in, for instance, destroyed, we will obviously not run that sample and send a replacement kit. QC flags, if there were any aberrations in pressure, temperature across the mass spec run. If there were any exertions reported or detected in metabolite patterns, as well as the total coverage of metabolites. Some of these metabolites are exogenous. It is not expected that all 296 of them will appear, and some exogenous metabolites may be detected in, sub limit of detection concentrations. So this individual is detecting 293 out of 296. Here is the key clinical insights. You can consider these the key molecular targets. These are often going to be targets themselves, mechanisms of action. So we're talking about enzymes, nuclear receptor sites for genomic expression that hormones often bind to. These are going to be microbes whose metabolism we may be targeting to produce some sort of secondary messenger molecule. So these are functional targets that we can adapt. In this instance, we have glyoxylase system failure, polyamine-driven immune proliferation, and we're going to tell you exactly what is going on, which metabolites we detected, what their Z-scores were, or roughly how many standard deviations they were from the normative reference, and exactly what enzyme, what end product, and what pathway this is affecting. We'll also give them in order of priority, as well as denote some key biomarkers. We have lots of training material that launched today, so I guarantee you all of this is going to be covered in depth in the training materials. Here are the top 4 contributors, where we plot the 4 lowest domains in an individual's profile, and we show which metabolites are contributing to strain or which metabolites are contributing to protective effects across these domains. And the length of the bar shows the magnitude of either strain. So 6-phosphogluconic acid is significantly straining the structural integrity domain, whereas lactate and NADPH are benefiting the scoring of this domain, though not to similar extent. So this is what the bars, the colors, and the length of the bars denote. Here are the top 5 metabolic patterns. We noticed very early on in our own data that there were often 4 or 5 different underlying factors that explained the vast majority of variance in an individual's profile. What we've done here is ask our AI to essentially query across all of these known pathways and contexts and show the patterns that are seen across all these domains. Now, keep in mind, patterns are not targets. Patterns are the products of aberrational metabolism. Those aberrational metabolites themselves, those targets are identified in the key clinical insights table, and this is showing the pattern. So in this individual, for instance, we have dysbiotic microbiome metabolite patterns, specifically the short-chain fatty acids are reduced. This shows elevated putrefaction markers as well, and some processes that may compromise the intestinal barrier. This pattern is drawing down 3 separate domains. Liver detox, inflammation, and gut ecosystem domain are being affected by it. Even the number 2 most detectable pattern is weighing on this glycemic control subdomain or domain, which is already optimized. Here are the top 3 interventions we gave earlier. Like I said, you will notice the top dietary recommendation, top lifestyle, and top supplemental recommendation populated in this panel. We will be just as specific and targeted as we were with the regular Aristotle test. What you will notice is that we have added a few things. Given the statistics that we've mined across all these 1,300 interventions, you may now see effect sizes and total ends, roughly the total number of individuals across a set of studies that are informing this low oxalate, high hydration, renal protective diet for this individual. This is from a set of studies that total cumulatively add to 185 people, and we do see a very high reported effect size. Okay, you'll see this across all of our interventions now. This is key metabolic drivers, just identifies those metabolites in real time. This is the new digital twinning page where you will see them ranked in order. You will see the impact on the underlying metabolite set, as well as the predicted delta change on the subdomain it's addressing, as well as an adherence effort. We previously had this data available to us from baseline to follow-up. Studies tend to lose people, that's known as attrition. That loss to follow-up is a good proxy for how difficult this particular intervention was to adhere to. So we use that attrition rate now to estimate adherence effort. You can see supplements usually have a lower adherence effort, whereas when we get to, here's the first dietary recommendation, the adherence effort goes to 2, and then, this zone 2 aerobic exercise has an adherence effort of 3. And we show, again, impact on the metabolite set and improvements predicted with the digital twinning. Each one of these 20 recommendations has been curated in such a manner to cover as many of the 124 subdomains as possible. So you're ensured adequate coverage, sufficient coverage for everything that has gone wrong or is detected to have gone wrong in the profile. More information is given, of course, in the training materials. And these are the domain pages where we're showing for cellular energy and mitochondrial resilience, we are measuring 296 metabolites. All of our metabolites are being used in calculation of this domain. That's not the case for all domains, but for the first few, every single metabolite has a purpose and is scored in some way. So here we can see carbohydrate and mitoflux. So we can look at what this model looks at. The model description is given in the black text. The interpretation of your specific score is given in the colored text right underneath. So we can see that AA oxidation nitrogen amino acids. This assesses the amino acids for energy production and the urea cycle and insufficiency in disposing nitrogen, with elevated BCAAs suggesting oxidative stress. And that is exactly what we see, reveals impaired amino acid oxidation with significant BCAA. So valine, leucine, isoleucine are going to be elevated in this person. We also show for every single page now, central metabolites or ratios that are the most heavily weighted in the calculation of that page. And each of these ratios comes with a description. So for domain 2, looking at things like nutrient sensing and substrate switching, AMPK, mTOR, and various other subdomains. You can see all the models that we've constructed here, from polyol to gut microbiome glycemic modulators. The model itself is denoted here, and the description or the interpretation of a specific score is given in the colored text. Okay. For domain 3, all 296 metabolites are being used. For domain 4, this is new, kidney filtration. We're going to review this in more detail. All 296 metabolites are being covered. It's only until we get to domain 5 that we see only 59 biomarkers are being used here. That's still quite specific modeling. And so the number of biomarkers analyzed is given at the top of the page. And for every page, we also have a subdomain distribution zone. So that tells us in this page, the methylation page, we have 6 subdomains. 3 are an early impairment, 1 is optimized, and 2 are impaired. Okay, so that is the overall structure of the test. Okay. So now that we've seen the whole report, let's keep going. Let me show you everything that's different from the original Aristotle panel. And this section is going to be mostly science, right? Exactly why we added what we added. So the headline numbers, one more time, but this time with context. 296 metabolites is a 135% increase. 15 domains is 3 net new. The 85% KEGG pathway coverage means we now touch nearly every primary metabolic pathway in the human cell. Every number on this slide really has earned its place by solving a specific clinical gap that we had in the old panel. Here is the side-by-side, and I want to draw your attention specifically to the bottom 3 rows, 3 net new domains. We have methylation, used to be a previously reported page that was calculated in the scoring of 4 other domains, but now it is its own scored page. The gut ecosystem has returned to our panel. Those of you who've been testing from the early days of Curium knew that gut health was an early part of our original test, which was then removed and replaced with bone health for various reasons that are for another time and day. And then the next 5 slides are going to be one change on each slide. I'll keep it pretty tight here. One new domain, glycemic control. This is a domain that captures the insulin resistance phenotype that standard labs really cannot see. The branch chain amino acid signature, the branch chain amino acid to aromatic ratio, and even the the lipotoxicity across medium chain acylcarnitines that we can monitor, the hepatic versus peripheral insulin resistance that we can detect between metabolic flexibility and nutrient sensing, the polyol overflow pathway. There are a total of 14 subdomains here. So if you ever had a patient with a normal A1C, but a gut feeling that something was metabolically off, I think this is a domain for you of your interest. Next is kidney filtration and renal resilience, right? We have 9 subdomains. Here's the key insight overall. We basically show that nephron stress shows up in circulating metabolites, usually months before EGFR begins to decline. So we measure glomerular reserve, proximal tubule transport integrity, acid-base strain, ammonia excretion, and even gut-derived uremic toxins. Things like indoxyl sulfate, p-cresyl sulfate, TMAO. So this domain catches renal trouble while you still have time to intervene. And then stress and sleep is our newest domain and probably the most exciting clinically. We have 6 subdomains. These cover sleep neurotransmitters, so things like tryptophan, serotonin, GABA, glycine, histamine. We also have adenosine sleep pressure being monitored via ATP, ADP, AMP catabolism, that pathway. We also have lymphatic clearance prerequisites, and adrenal resilience is going to be measured through sorbate and pantothenic acid depletion. So the domain alone is going to change how a lot of you practice. And the goal was to solidify in a formal domain page patterns that we had seen, like HPA axis activation and cortisol metabolism interfering with endocrine synthesis, and all the other patterns that we had noted in the digital twinning sections over so many years are now formalized as a standalone detectable domain. Gut ecosystem, right? It has returned. It's back on the panel. And the key message we want to convey here is that it's not a siloed score. Okay, microbial metabolites feed directly into kidney, cardiometabolic, and inflammation domain equations. So you will see gut pathology show up across multiple domains now, which is exactly how the biology actually works. Methylation used to sit inside 4 various domains: aging, inflammation, environmental toxins, and mutational load. Now it's a full standalone domain with 6 subdomains present on that page. The biggest practical change is this. Instead of getting a flag that says methylation is impaired, you now get a precise readout of which branch is the bottleneck, okay? Is it remethylation reserve? Is it transsulfuration coupling? Is it NAD plus biosynthesis? Is it SAM drain load? Is it choline PEMT? Is it genomic 1 carbon demand? We can tell all of those apart. And that precision changes, again, which supplement you pick. Alex?
All right, well, thank you, Dr. Jasby. We're going to shift gears a little bit here and move into operations and logistics. So this section is going to cover actually what's changed in collection, pricing, and turnaround. Most of you are already ordering, so think of this as a quick operational delta. 4 slides, and then we'll move on to launching the kit. So first, the good news, almost nothing about the collection experience has changed. It's the same at-home kit, same finger stick, 4 blood spots on a Wattman 903 filter card, same prepaid return envelope, same 10-week stability window at room temperature, and most importantly, the same PhD science team consult available to you and your patients for interpretation support. If your patients are used to the old kit, they're going to essentially feel like nothing has changed. So that's a huge plus. Some new things. So a 12-hour exercise avoidance. So, you know, the one thing that's changed on the patient side, and you need to know about this, it's very important, is this new avoidance rule before collection. So the question, of course, is why? Acute exertion transiently distorts lactate, pyruvate, branched chain amino acids, and acylcarnitines in a way that can produce false signals in cellular energy, glycemic control, and stress and sleep domains. So 12 hours actually matches the literature validated washout. So again, please, this is extremely important. Please over communicate this with your patients when you order. This is the single most common reason a sample gets flagged. So pricing and turnaround. So for pricing, it's going to be $600 wholesale to clinics, $2,500 MSRP for patient direct pay. Turnaround time is 48 hours from sample receipt at our Phoenix lab. Drop ship is available if you want kits going straight from us to the patient. One important detail that I want to make note of, the report is always delivered always delivered to the ordering practitioner, never directly to the patient. Clinical interpretation needs to stay in your hands, and this is how we've ensured it.
Yeah, and just update for those on the call. I know many of you have called into customer support recently and asked about this. So previously, your patient had to list essentially your healthcare provider email to be sent a copy of those results, and then we would send that directly and only to that email address. We've since added another check in our sample processing dissemination system whereby that barcode is referenced against your order numbers. So regardless of what your patient puts in that survey, we are always going to return that barcode's results to the ordering account's email. Okay, so no worries in where your results are going. Alex?
All right, so let's move on to the provider workflow. This is 7 steps, so nothing surprising here. You're going to order via the portal. The kit will ship. The patient collects with 12-hour exercise washout. Return ships in the prepaid envelope. The lab returns within 48 hours. Report comes to you via PDF and the portal. Retest in 8 to 26 weeks, depending on which intervention you choose. Most of the patients, based on our piloting of this, will retest at 12 weeks. So we're going to make a transition here again for the launch kit. This section is the whole reason we call this webinar today. We are shipping a complete launch kit alongside the platform, and I want to make sure every clinician on this call knows exactly what's in it and how to access it. So yeah, let's bring that up. So 6 documents will be in your launch kit, but I want to flag the timing up front. 5 are going to be available today. This is going to include the patient FAQs, the practitioner FAQs, the 20-page consultation script that walks you through how to read the report with the patient. This is going to cover the 18 conditions mapped to Aristotle Plus domains and metabolites, and the 96-page scientific and clinical handbook with the full methodology and digital twinning details if you're curious. The 6th, the marketing suite, this is going to drop the week of April 13th. We'll come back to this in a moment. Okay, Marketing collateral. On top of the clinical documents, you will get the full marketing suite. And as I just mentioned, this one drops the week of April 13th, not today. You get a patient brochure and a what to expect collection mailer. 9 specialty flyers tailored to different practice types, be it biohacker, functional medicine, longevity, sports performance, mental health, and so on. Plus 5 condition-specific one-pagers. Everything is co-branded with your clinic mark. We'll send a separate email when these do go live.
Yeah, absolutely. So their content is done. The design will take a little while longer. And as Alex mentioned, they will be able to be downloaded and co-branded with your own logos.
All right, so let's go over how to access everything. There's 2 paths depending on what you need. To place an order for a patient, go to therio.me/pages/wholesale and log in with your practitioner credentials. That is the ordering portal, and that is the only place orders happen. For the training documents, the FAQs, the consultation script, condition guides, handbook, we have put everything in a shared Google Drive folder in this QR code that I have here. If you want to take a snapshot of that now with your phone, you can scan it, and a link will be sent. The follow-up, and a link will be sent. We'll also send a follow-up email next week with this information. And any questions beyond what's in the drive, please email info@therio.me, and we'll get a human to you within 1 business day. All right, so I think we have some time now, so we'll take your questions. Dr. Jasby and I will route these questions in real time. Science and report questions are going to go to Dr. Jasby. Ops and workflow questions are going to come to me, and anything else that crosses both, we'll tag team.
Do you guys have any questions for us? Please put them in the chat. Don't have any questions, I'll take that as a sign that we were very thorough in our review and our updating. We do have some pre-planned questions that we'll go through and just reiterate with you all in a second. But if you do have any, if a retest is required, is there an additional cost to pay? Yeah. John, if a retest is required, is there an additional cost to patients? Yeah, and then we have can you put the QR code back up? Here's a QR code. We'll rest there for those who still want to scan and access those documents. And there's all the education you could really want. That's all done in there. And there is actually some marketing materials in that marketing folder, but more are going to be added shortly. And so is there a retest is required? Yes, if a retest is required, if the sample has been run already, right? The patient's been informed that they should fast and not have very high exertional activity. Even moderate to vigorous exercises is tolerable, but anything beyond MBPA, in the last 12 hours should be avoided. So if the patient says, I didn't fast, I sampled at 4 p.m. and I exercised, an hour or 2 before, and they've been, you've conveyed that to them. Obviously, we expect you to convey that. That's also on the test kits and the information they receive. And they send in the sample and we run that sample and we need to retest. It is going to be another retest, a full retest cost. If, however, they take the sample and something goes wrong, let's say the sample, they couldn't get, let's say they contaminated the blood card. We had somebody who recently spilled coffee on the blood card. That is going to just incur a $30 resample fee. It'll ship next day. You will contact our customer service, request a replacement kit, and that'll be shipped once that $30 invoice for the replacement kit is settled. Conversely, if let's say a kit arrives to you and it's for some reason damaged or used or improperly stored and it's obvious, we will take care of you and send a replacement kit out at our expense. Or if it comes damaged by UPS or another carrier, we will take it up with the carrier and we sample you at our expense. The next question is this something to use in conjunction with functional analysis like optimal DX or instead of? Alex, you want to take a first stab at that? The question is this something to use in conjunction with functional analysis or optimal DX or instead of?
You can use it in conjunction. I mean, we understand that a lot of our practitioners are ordering multiple tests, but as you saw with just how comprehensive this test is, we view this as essentially a standalone. You can make those comparisons. One of the things that really sets, of course, our test apart is the clinical interpretation of what everything actually means and how to put it into clinical action with our digital twinning.
Yeah, great point, Alex. I'll share my screen briefly. This is in the materials that you guys have reviewed that are in the Google Drive, okay? I just really briefly want to share my screen and go over this with you because it's a question we get all the time. What can it replace? Well, if you look at the intersection of our metabolites and what other panels it can replace, you are looking at roughly a 25% cost savings at MSRP. So this document is available to you in that Google Drive link. You can see that we completely replaced an oat test, an AA panel, methylation tests, gut health tests, especially the gut health metabolites. Nutritional and vitamin panels can be largely obviated. Fatty acid profiles, triglycerides can be obviated. Chemokines and cytokine testing can be replaced. Looking at kidney or liver functional markers, those are largely obviated as well. Specific glycemic markers or cardiovascular risk profiles, you no longer have to take separate tests, or even an environmental toxin panel. It's about $300. That can be replaced. So here's the cost comparison. And again, this is already available in that Google Drive link. But can you use it in place of other testing? Absolutely. You can use it in place of any test that is redundant of the 84% of metabolism we are capable of monitoring. So going back to the questions. Charlie, yes, this handbook is new. This handbook has just launched today. You are the first people to see it. And so it is comprehensive of every single subdomain in this test is cited, is shown, is reasoned. Even the mathematical computations are to some extent explained. Great answer. Thanks from Jake. Jake, thanks for attending. Are we able to see the values of each metabolites measured? For example, the amino acid levels you measured in the specific domains. Can we see how our patient is doing with each of these amino acid levels? Or is the summary? Okay, yes. So great question. You can always request raw data to be sent to you. That is just a request you can make to our customer service. We will send you a CSV file with those individual metabolite levels. In roughly 1 week, maybe 2, Alex, if we can get. I mean, I know our AI engineer is here on the call, so if you hear from Antonio, we need it quick. But we're developing a metabolite atlas, which will give you a lot more information than what you're used to having before, which is just your levels and the low and high. We'll give you your levels and the low and high reference averages for all of these 296 metabolites in a CSV if you request it. And then we will show you on number lines and also comparisons to the reference average in a metabolite atlas, which is going to be another 200-page document listing every single one of these metabolite levels and some quartiles and distribution information. That's going to be available in about 2 weeks, and it will be either appended to your report or you may upload it as a separate file. What about for mitochondria? Dr. Simpson, good to see you again. Yeah, absolutely. So the mitochondria are now becoming, instead of naming it the mitochondria, it's now cellular energy, and it's the first subdomain in the panel. Let me bring that up again, and we can walk through it. Oops, that is not the correct one. There we go. So mitochondria are now under cellular energy. And you can see this person's mitochondrial score is so much above the reference average. And what are we looking at in the mitochondria? So a lot of things are going to be new. So carbohydrate and mitoflux. You're used to this now as part of the mitochondrial page. This is an updated model of what we had previously. Fatty acid import and beta oxidation. So everything from carnitine shuttle efficiency to the levels of those fatty acids that show the churn of the beta oxidation cycle. TCA and anaphoresis, so the backbone of the TCA cycle intermediates, as well as amino acid handling, mitochondrial redox, and all the cofactor pools that are there. Ketone biology that takes place in the mitochondria, specifically through 3-HB and acetoacetate dynamics, as well as nitrogen handling and amino acid oxidation. We also look at mitomembranes, looking at known constituents that are overrepresented in the mitochondrial membrane relative to other membranes like choline, betaine, and phospholipid precursors, and of course, energetic stress and purines, where elevated breakdown of certain byproducts will show ATP depletion. So great question. Again, the mitochondrial domain carries forward. Many of the subdomains are reincarnated and enhanced, but it does, of course, still have a very dedicated page to its analysis. Let me see. Let me go back to the chat. Okay, any other questions before we continue? Thanks for the great question, Dr. Simpson. Okay, let's continue with our slides. So here are some questions, that we get all the time. And these are already in the FAQ documents that are uploaded online. Some things that I'll briefly, touch on. Who is the Aristotle +4? Really, most of our physicians are using this as a first pass assessment across general systems monitoring of, the large swath of metabolism we're able to monitor, right? 84% of all canonical PEG pathways are being able to monitor, or we're able to monitor with 2 or more sentinel metabolites. So the coverage is truly unprecedented. So we have everyone from, oncologists using this test to treat pretty sick people to aesthetic clinics that are using it for, purely aesthetic reasons. Is the Aristotle Plus diagnostic? No, we don't, necessarily. There are some things that can now be answered with our test. For instance, vitamin D3 is a metabolite itself. So whereas before serum OH-D3 levels are your gold standard, you can use relative abundance to indicate whether a D3 is highly likely, a D3 deficiency is likely. But what we're monitoring is pathways. What we're monitoring is function. And again, disease doesn't happen at the single metabolite level. We really do encourage you not to treat individual metabolites and their low or high levels. Treat the model, treat the function, and that's really what we've aimed to do here, not just with our digital twinning, but with our key molecular targets that we're providing you guys. Ordering is the same, sample collection is the same. We want you to look at us not just as a panel, but a decision platform, and that's really what this type of data enables. So if you have any other questions, let me know. Here are some of the pre-answered FAQs that are contained in the documents online. I'll still be monitoring the chat if anything else comes up. Okay.
Are we ready to close it out? No other questions?
I'm not seeing any come through in the chat, Alex.
All right. Well, thank you all for your time today. Again, the Aristotle Plus is live as of April 1st, and we are ready for your patience. The recording, the slides, and the marketing suite will land in your inbox in the next week's follow-up email. That is when we will consolidate everything into one packet just to make it really easy for you. If you want white glove onboarding for your clinic in the meantime, please email info@therio.me. That's info@therio.me, and we'll get a time in the calendar with your onboarding team. So with that, on the behalf of myself and Dr. Jasby, please have a great weekend. And we can't wait to see the first patient stories from all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Take care. Hold on, there's maybe
Did any more chats come through?
I'm trying to slip through chats right now. So nope, that's it.
All right.
Guys, take care.